Hello, my name is Sarah Backley and I'm the Executive Director at the British Chamber of Commerce here in Japan. It's so lovely to be joined today by one of our lovely entrepreneur members, Sarah Furuya. Before we get started and deep dive into the content that we have prepared for you today, I'd like to give Sarah the opportunity to please introduce yourself in however many words you would like to. Over to you, Sarah.
Well, Sarah, thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you for hosting me today here as well at this terrific location. So my name is Sarah Furuya and I've been here for 21 years in Japan. I arrived in 2001. I've lived in Tokyo, and 3 years ago I moved down to Zushi, which is next to Kamakura on the shores of Japan. And that's a really key part of my story as well, was that call to the beach.
Right.
Because that's where I'm from as well. I'm originally from near Liverpool in the UK, in England, and I think that's also had a massive impact on me. I'm pretty sure that Liverpool's the most famous city in the world. There's not been anywhere I've been where somebody, like whether I've been in India or China or Japan or America or wherever, where I've said I'm from Liverpool and people don't go the Beatles or football. You know, it's got such a profile, so I think that hasn't done me any harm whatsoever.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your association with the BCCJ, your initial involvement. I know that you're a very well-known face and name to a large part of the membership. So how were you first introduced to the chamber and how did you get involved?
My first real connection was we went up to Tohoku following the earthquake together, and I went up there as part of a British Chamber of Commerce volunteering group, and then kind of stayed involved with the people who the chamber made connections with. There was a lot of involvement there, and then from 2011 to 2013 I was the president of a women's networking organisation in Japan, in Tokyo, called FEW, for Empowering Women. And during that time, because Laurie was the head of the British Chamber of Commerce, we started to collaborate.
Right.
And I was the first president to kind of get membership for the British Chamber of Commerce with FEW, and all our members were allowed to join as members, and we negotiated a great deal for our members at the time. So then I became even more involved and more aware. And then 2 years ago, I joined the executive committee on the diversity, equity and inclusion part of the committee task force, and then stepped down after 1 year because I was starting to feel this call to something else. So I remain a member because I love the community, and I think networking and being in the room with people is so important. So the magic keeps happening, right? The magic keeps happening, but that kind of creative commerce, that kind of pulling people in, and it's great. The chamber hits everything, right, from the highest part of business to the smaller places like myself, a very small, very small company.
Connecting people is something that you love doing, clearly. It happens very naturally for you, and it's a big part of your business. Sarah Furuya Coaching is, I think, what we should call it to start with.
Yes.
Please tell us how this came about and your journey so far.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I remember 10-15 years ago, there was a book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point, I think. So people of my generation, especially kind of who are in the coaching business or what have you, will remember that book well. And in there, he identified people called mavens and connectors. And those are those kinds of people where, for example, on Facebook or something like that, you've got loads and loads of common friends with them.
Right.
Because one of the things I think that I'm uniquely good at is recognizing patterns and being able to put people together. And that's great for coaching, creating opportunities with people. So there's a lot of different connections that, for any room that I'm in, British Chamber events or anything like that, I can recognize people who I've put together, and I can recognize people who I've put towards jobs, and it's something that I really love. I think some people just really love doing things like that. It gives me so much happiness and so much entrepreneurial satisfaction. I think it's part of my entrepreneurial satisfaction. It's part of that kind of doing commerce creatively, is being able to put people together very carefully and very deliberately, and sometimes quite casually.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just people being in the room together. So, you know, I run clothing swaps, and at those swaps, I would often highlight people, or then I would see people going out to dinner together afterwards, or connecting people there.
Great
or
to see that.
it is great to see that, isn't it? And then I also sit on another committee, which is Refugees Empowerment International. So I might think, who's good for this? Who's good for this? Let's connect this person to this person. How can that happen? And I'm also a podcaster. So through the podcast, it's called the Legends Podcast,
Nice.
which is very grand. But for me, storytelling is part of the backbone of my business. So, you know, there are many ways to lead a life, and everybody has stories. It is two of my taglines. And I really mean that. Like, everybody has stories as a coach. Like, I'm constantly listening to people's stories and working with them, right? So, and helping them to adjust them, or tell the truth, or tell more better stories, better stories, or to reaffirm their stories. It's really a massive part of that. So that storytelling is very important. And a legend actually is a myth, or a legend is a story or a tale that may or may not be true. Right? So I love taking those stories and making them useful to other people.
All of these things that you've mentioned, the podcasts, your involvement with Refugees Empowerment International, the clothes swaps, I'm sure a million other initiatives that you've launched and evolved over the years. This has all brought you to this point now.
Yes.
Which is why you're here today. It's why we've invited you to speak. It's your rebranding.
That's right.
An exciting time for you.
Exactly.
I believe, well, please correct me if I'm wrong, 10 years? Was that in October, November
Yes,
of last
that's
year?
right.
That was the trigger point. Tell me more about this. Why now?
Mm-hmm.
And why this particular rebranding? What's new?
Okay. So when I first started my business 10 years ago, that was like, I had this kind of gut feeling that I wanted to leave my job and do something else. I'd been bitten by the coaching bug, loved it, and then started training to become a coach myself.
Yeah.
And so I started to learn all about business, reading about it, being an entrepreneur, following, you know, those big name female entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs, but other ones too, about how to start my business.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And so I quit my job, I flew to New York to a conference by one of my faraway mentors called Marie Forleo, who's one of these big name, you know, multi-millionaire coaches, and went to her last live event, which was called Rich, Happy and Hot Live, which is not really my vibe, but you know, it was a really, really great event, and it just helped me to kind of launch into my business, and also gave me a great story to tell, right? And I think it's really important to have good stories to tell as well, but it's true, only true ones too. And so that was 10 years ago, and I was hired by my previous company, which was great. And then I started to kind of collect and freelance a lot, collecting lots of different clients. And so then through my previous company, which was a corporate training company, and lots of different other corporate training companies, I then was in all different kinds of industries all the time. I was doing one-to-one coaching, running workshops, designing like long programs. Small businesses, entrepreneurs, always having to think about how to scale. I'm sure it's the same with the British Chamber of Commerce as well. It's like, how much do we scale? Do I want to stay small? Do I want to take on new coaches? Do I want to design my own programs and things like that? But I've always quite liked the intimacy of being kind of quite boutique-y. And then I started to kind of change the mix of the balance of my business. So it was freelancing versus private coaching. Through the For Empowering Women organization really boosted me and helped me out there. I can't stress the importance of networks, and stress the importance of being in nurturing networks that really suit you, and that really suited me at the time. And so then 6 years ago, I started my own one-year program. It was called February is the New January. FNJ, a now legendary program, even if I do say so myself. And that became my kind of leading brand. And then basically I was able to essentially just move over to more or less 90% my own business, my own coaching, and then maybe 10% outsourced stuff. So I still work running journey programs with big organizations and corporations and so on. And then 2012 was when I first quit my job. 2022, again, I started getting that witchy feeling, that intuition, that instinct, that gut feeling. I think gut feeling is probably the best description of it. And also, I think it's really important to acknowledge the impact of COVID on this and what happened there. So this post-COVID landscape. And I really felt like something, I want to change this program. My clients are changing. Something just felt very, and I was like, I want to do more creative stuff. Like and I find corporate very creative. I mean, I've saying this to you before, all the patterns, all the complexity, all the dependencies that are happening in the corporate world or in the public service world, or in the diplomatic world, or especially your world. I mean, you're right at the center of the whole web of that, right? I just find that fascinating as well. So I wanted to kind of keep this very creative piece there, but also grow more and more creativity into the business. And me and my marketing lady, Angela, who's actually sitting over there. Should we call her my marketing director? Yeah. We had a conversation one day and she said SFC, sounds like SF Creative. And I was like, yeah, SF Creative. And then I was on my way into town on the green car into Tokyo. Light bulb moment. I said, I'm going to rebrand as this. And then it felt so right. It just felt so right. SF Creative. So what does that look like? I'm like, is it a creative agency? I don't know what that means. But coaching is still the biggest part. But it's not just Sarah Furuya coaching anymore, or SF coaching. There's something bigger, as we say in systems coaching, something else is waiting to emerge from that. And that's what I did. I followed my gut instinct. This week, I'm closing down the February is the New January program for the last time.
Wow, okay.
I know, which has been terrifying and exciting. But I think that's entrepreneurial life, actually. And also, anybody who runs a company has to make decisions like this about layoffs, restructuring, about cutting out parts of the business and putting other pieces of the business in. I'm just doing it in a very tiny company. So I had the SFC 10-year party in October 23rd, and 24th was the day that I flew to New York 10 years ago.
Wow.
And there was 50 people in the room. It was beautiful. I invited everybody from my past, everybody who'd helped me to get to where I am today. And I just wanted it to be very, very representative of my world, which is actually everybody's world, but visibly. So I had my two favorite drag queens to come in and host.
Lovely.
And I had poetry performances. I got people to bring their art. I had no idea what was going to happen from this. I just felt that I wanted to bring it in. My photographer, who does all the photographs for my clients, she brought her photographs. And I also did, I hope you don't mind, but I stole the idea of the BBA.
By all means.
The British Business Awards, of which I've been nominated 3 times.
You have indeed.
3 times. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. I did what was called the Many Ways Awards. Many Ways Awards. So it's about the many ways to lead a life. And I just honoured people in the room who may not ordinarily be honoured in that way.
You mentioned a little while ago that the trigger point was really this gut instinct.
Yes.
This feeling that you had.
Yes.
But these changes are something that every business has to make, every organization has to make. And you being in the position that you are, you have the ability to really see these changes firsthand that are happening in the market with your clients. And so, of course, it's a mirror. And you realize that in that moment, you then have to make these changes within your own organization. I think it's really interesting that you have now changed your focus to creativity. I shouldn't say change. I know you said that coaching is still a large part of your service and your offering. You've mentioned now an illustrator and artist that you're going to be working with in the coming weeks and months. Do you see creativity as an answer, as a solution to some of the issues that the corporate world is still facing? You know, the clients that you work with in the corporate world.
That's such a great question, Sarah. So the answer is yes and, right? So I don't think that there's any secret that I already have quite a creative streak in me. I mean, I don't think that's ever been a secret. But essentially for those clients, so when I'm going in as a service provider into an organization, I have to meet them with what they need. Right, so I'm not going to go in and sell them on some kind of creative program if that's not what they need. But what I might do is in my coaching practice is I will start something perhaps 12 months with certain things and see who comes to that.
Right.
On the other hand, when I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were asking me about the rebrand, what had happened, because, you know, in the small talk it comes through over lunch. And I said this and they said, oh, that's interesting. I seem to remember a few years ago we did a kind of drawing thing. Maybe we could talk to you about some kind of creative stuff for our people as well. This is an investment bank, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So I just go, oh yeah, you know, that would be interesting. So then, of course, my mind starts going, who could I put drawing for that? How could that look? And also then what somebody like me does, who's at that point, I'm in a consulting role, right? I've got a consulting hat on as a small business owner. I can say, okay, here's the proposal, here's the costing, final PowerPoint slide. Also, you mentioned, you know, this kind of thing to just sow the seed that that's something that could be done as well. So that's how this is starting to kind of, it's a very, dare I say, intuitive way of working. And I think that most people who are in senior executive positions have to have this kind of mind as well, to kind of work with all the different things that are going on around them. It's just that I use a different kind of terminology and have a different kind of energy, I suppose, to a lot of people. But don't make any mistake that people who look conservative in the senior positions are not constantly thinking about all these different things. And then back to kind of retreating as well is, and this is an interesting thing as well, this is just about me, it's like, okay, so February is very much the retreat month, even though I work until the end of Monday, which was you know, just one of those things that happens. March, I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I was like, how about the very least? What's the very least I can do to keep the business viable?
On behalf of the BCCJ, I just want to say congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
On the road to something really exciting.
Yes.
And it's exciting to really view it from the outside in and to see how this might transform.
Yes.
As you say, March might be a quieter month, one-on-one, but, you know, over the next kind of 12 months, say, it'll be really interesting to see how you know, follow the trends that you're seeing in the business and the arts world and, you know, whatever other worlds you decide to delve into. So all the best.
Thank you.
And I think some of our viewers and readers would be really interested to know how they can follow your journey and find out a little more about Sarah Furuya Creative going forward.
Well, you can find me, if you just Google Sarah Furuya, you can find all the places I exist. Great. But actually the place I love to play the most is Instagram.
Right.
So we've got @Sarah Furuya and @Sarah Furuya Creative. One is the business account and one is the kind of personal account. Both of them you are most welcome to come and join me there. And
well, thank you so much for joining us.
You're
today,
so
Sarah.
welcome.
It's been such a pleasure to speak to you.
And you, Sarah.
Really look forward to following your journey.
Thank you so much.